Welcome to Level Sync, a Final Fantasy XI podcast with your hosts, DA Soccer, Caladrius, Lost Time Lord, and Quetch.
Hello and welcome to Level Sync podcast. We are actually on episode 6, which is phenomenal to me because these are bi-weekly episodes and we are just keeping on top of everything that is happening in the Horizon world. And with our interview with Eric on episode 4, with our episode 5, with us just catching up with everything that's been going on in the world, we are taking a little bit of a step back because a lot of people are starting to get wrapped up with Zilart missions, with their Chains of Promathia, with being able to get towards that end game, and with little discussions that were dropped in about the TO treasures coming down the pipes. Who knows in the future? We wanted to be able to take a kind of a recap back of the history of the Vana'diel project, with everything that has happened over the 20 plus years that we've actually had this game. So before we get started with introducing our guests, I want to introduce the regular crew here. We got our local paladin slash bard, Cal.
Yeah, how's it going?
We got our main thief, Quetch.
What's up, y'all?
I was thinking you were going to do just a peace sign like I did on last episode. And we got LTL, Lost Time Lord, our future Blue Mage, but current summoner with his wonderful carbuncle and its amazing abilities from last episode.
Yeah, I'm always a Blue Mage. I'm not a future Blue Mage. My Blue Mage, my heart wears the Blue Mage AF, so that's just how that is.
You're going to style lock that bad boy as soon as you get it.
Already style lock.
Perfect. So also our guest today is Funkworkz. You may know him from his streams. You have pulled up a page that he has created on the BG Wiki. He is kind of the back end scene of the Final Fantasy community on here, but definitely wanted to bring him in because there's nobody more knowledgeable about the history of Vana'diel and the project that has actually been undertaken of the full expansion of the game and where it's come from and how it's developed. Funk. Nice to finally get you in a chat, man. How you doing?
Yeah, I've been doing good. Thank you for having me. I remember back before I got started, this DA hit me up. He's like, "Hey, what's going on? Can I talk to you for a minute?" I'm like, "Oh God, what's up now?" You gave me a little call and you will ask me to be a guest in a future episode. So I'm happy to be here. So I do thank you guys very much.
Man, when we got this up and running, you were one of the first people. I was like, man, there's nobody more knowledgeable about Vana'diel than I know of Funk. Especially with all you do currently. And I mean, it's been in the past, currently, the updates, everything that rolls down the pipes. We'll dive into all of that. I do want to start off and be able to talk about just kind of your background and your history before we dive more into you. Would be, where did you start on Final Fantasy XI? Where did your beginnings, where did the original Funk come from?
So I vividly remember starting Final Fantasy XI in the summer of 2004. It was right before Chains of Promathia came out. And I do remember seeing the commercials on TV. You see the guy on the hill looking over to Amnesia. Like, oh man, it looks so cool. You can play with other people. Because my first Final Fantasy was Final Fantasy X. I think that was you too, DA, I want to say.
Yeah,
so
I love 10. I love 10. I was a 7 guy, but 10 was...
7, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, 10 was my first one. I remember seeing Tidus in Walmart on that cover. I had to get that. So after I played through 10 a couple times, I'm like, oh, what's the next one? What's next? So along came 11. And I think to myself, I have to start school pretty soon. I can't play Chains of Promathia. What's going to happen now? So I did end up studying right before it came out. So I want to say it was September 2004. And then school started soon after that. Luckily, I did have enough time on my hands because I was homeschooled. So I could basically set our own schedule. So that worked out really well for me, playing the game and getting too addicted to it at that point in time.
Mm-hmm.
Gotcha. So you were PlayStation 2 or were you PC?
I was PC, but I do remember I had a 32-inch old TV in my room where I was playing, and I did hook up my PC to my TV because I thought that was cool at the time. You know, oh, I'm getting the biggest screen possible. Along came the Xbox 360. I did pick up a copy of that game, 11 for the 360, and I remember it being just a lag fest compared to the PC because I had a pretty high-end PC at the time. I also wanted to try it on the PS2, but I'm like, oh, this is pixelated as hell. I can't do this. So I ended up sticking with PC, even though I did own copies for the PS2 and Xbox 360.
What jobs did you play? Like, what was your what did you get into the game with?
So initially, it all started with the Brady Games Guide. I'm sure most of you all out there also the Brady Games Guide, the original OG one. I was flipping through the pages and like, oh, this armor looks awesome. It was the Iron Musketeer armor from Juno. All the gate guards in there had it. So I'm like, oh, I want to be a paladin. So I started off as a Galka warrior. I had my first link shell. It was a Galka only link shell. It's called the Galka Fist. I got recruited to that because I was leveling in Lithium Plateau. Along came a Galka named Inari. He was a samurai. He was like, hey, you have a link shell? I was just a little old noob at the time, even though I did start in Bastok. But somehow I ended up walking to Juno because in the intro movie, you see Tanasia there. And I thought that was Juno at the time. Yeah, exactly. The little tiny little.
Yeah.
So I wanted to see Juno. And I remember Inari called it Wayno. I'm like, what the hell is Wayno? I've never heard that before. So I ended up walking to Wayno when I was a level 13 warrior.
Ooh.
And set my home point there. I got stuck there. I was successful getting there. I didn't die. But this was before I knew Quadabs aggroed to sound. I always thought they were sight. But I was lucky enough to not get aggro and die walking from Bastok to Wayno. So I ended up making it my way there. I started with a friend of mine, and I did want to make sure that I could get my skills up to date. So I ended up being the bad friend and leaving him behind because he didn't play as much as I did. Story of our lives, though. But he wanted him to be a Dark Knight. And at the time, I wanted to say I was still the warrior. Like I mentioned, I think he started as a white mage. But we both walked to Juno together, and we sat stuck there. But we also wanted to explore the world. So from there, we went to Windurst, and we didn't make it because you can walk on those little pathways, and you can follow the road basically in the Champagne and in the pathways and mountains. So we didn't make it to Windurst, and we were able to level up. We took the boat back to Selbine and the dunes, and we got our levels there. But after that, we did end up making our way to Sandoria from there. So that's where I was in the Lithium Plateau. I was soloing at the time. That's where I got my first link shell for the Galka Fist.
Nice. Galka.
Lots more stories though, but I started out as paladin or warrior, then paladin, and naturally I went to bard. Galka Bard, represent. I wanted bard because I wanted to level and get merits from a paladin. So I basically leveled, and we always hit up the King Vampir's Tomb monk parties back in the secret room where the strange apparatus was. I got to pulling there. We did have a few summoner burn parties there as well with 2 hours and such. That was pretty fun. There's also in Colico Tunnel where you just pull the whole zone, you just 2-hour it and blast them all away. I'm lucky enough to get in there, even though they didn't really need bard, but I had some connections, I suppose, back then. But also,
at least the man has good taste. He's a Galka.
Galka,
there we go.
Paladin Bard. He's literally
Bard.
you,
Sounds
Cal.
familiar. Yeah, so also I went up to Sky, and we're doing ninja burn parties in the weapons in the shrine.
Yeah.
Not sure if you guys do that on Horizon or not, but it definitely was a thing on retail.
People
Keep the stun katanas out.
They do merit there. I'm sure ninjas do go there. It's a place for merits.
Oh, so to go along with that, the stun katanas were popular as well. So basically, I leveled alchemy because they were a popular craft in alchemy. So I got my alchemy up to 100, and I was just making bank in those stun katanas and then my Shido +1s. So that also went hand in hand with my first part of the game is Bard, Paladin, and Alchemy, pretty much.
I was just thinking about the Mamushido +1 today because I also do alchemy on Horizon.
I did about that.
Yeah, on Horizon I'm 100. I was just thinking about those today. I'm wondering, does anybody use these? It would be worth me trying to do some HQs, but I'll have to look because I had forgotten they had, and like there was like stun. People used the stun daggers back in the day too, right? Anybody remember?
Yeah, there's the kukris.
Yes. They
were popular. I think there was an ingredient that was hard to find, so I didn't really make those as much because the katanas were just cheap as hell to make.
They are, yep. Buddy of mine just finished leveling to 91 on them. today,
Well,
actually.
you better get out there and make those before this video is out, because
Yeah.
it will be out, kind of like DA's
Hey,
Gush Balls.
I do the editing, and I'm the one who posts it on Mondays, so hopefully
Well, you have control over
get
them.
in on the market. Yeah.
Oh yeah, there's a new thing. It's no longer Gelsba that I'm sick and tired of. It's Gideus. We'll dive into that part. With those early days, and what did you call Juno again? How did you pronounce that?
It was Inari pronounced it Wayno.
Wayno.
Wayno,
Okay, I'm gonna
because
have
the
to
J
try
is
to.
silent.
I'm gonna have to work that into
The,
my.
the,
Somehow,
most, the most Spanish pronunciation of freaking Gino I've ever heard.
somehow the E and the U are switched as well, and the J is silent. So go figure.
Wayno. So with those early days and that trip down memory lane, what are some of the things that you missed during that content of the era, the early days that you were playing? Because let's be honest, Horizon is just Zilart and Chains of Promathia. So those days of the early stuff and not as many expansions that have come out and all the additional crafting and the zones and the merit parties and everything, that it's really just the core for Horizon right now. What are some of the things that you miss of those early days, since you're still playing retail and the game's changed over the past 2 decades?
So my fondest memory from back then was probably running through COP with my static. I was at the Galka Paladin before the MP buff. It was tough, let me tell you. We didn't even have enough MP to cast Raise at level 50. So I remember eating those apple pies like crazy, just get those MP. But running through the missions was definitely amazing. I leveled Paladin quickly to 75 because it was my first 75, like I mentioned. But we basically, my static and I were going through the missions. We were one of the first groups, NA groups anyway, I know of, overall to go through missions and such. We weren't the first. We weren't doing all the world first or anything like that, but it was before any guides were out that we know of, all Japanese guides. It was before Eresia's guide came out. I'm not sure if you guys remember that one. He made a very thorough guide on COP. Everyone used to follow it before the wikis came out. But we discovered lots of different things as far as where to go, people, NPCs to talk to, and paths to follow and strategies for the fights. But I'd have to say that is one of my fondest memories. But I do have a few more.
You saw Cal over here cry in Galka just a moment ago when you were talking about a raise. Cal,
I
why
have
is that hurt?
185 MP with dual astral rings at 69. I know your pain. It's 1 MP a level.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. But meanwhile, we had lots of HP.
Yeah, I got
Hardly
1500 HP.
Dick with 2 C's. With the past that you actually have on here, we've been talking about again the kind of growth we've had through Final Fantasy XI and Vana'diel. You've been working on a project recently, not just in doing things for the patches that roll out and the data mining for the community to be able to look into stuff, but you're talking about, or I'm talking about the development history of Vana'diel. Tell me a little bit about that, if you don't mind. How did that get started and why?
So I first started the project. It was inspiration from Elmer the Pointy. I'm not sure if you guys know the name. If a bunch of old school people might, if you frequent in BG, you might recognize the name. He disappeared from Final Fantasy in around 2011. I'm pretty sure he went to 14 or something. I just kind of lost interest in 11. But he had a version of the history of the game on jpbutton.com. That's also another meme website back then.
That rings a bell. Yeah.
I get that reference.
So the meme is actually a picture out there somewhere. I'm thinking if you search JP Button on BG, it'll come up.
I
But
remember
it's
this
a
now.
Photoshop picture of the little menu over on the left side. And one of the little options, it's disengage, items, call for help, whatever. One of those options is JP Button. And it goes over to the right. And it says claim,
Claim
generate
NM.
gil, claim an M. Yeah, a bunch of little things. So basically, it's the meme itself is like JP's have an advantage because of where they're at in the world, and they have less lag than us, pretty much. And they always get everything they want, did back then anyway. So that's this website anyway. And the website itself was focused around the Japanese community and getting opinions of them and what they thought of the NA players and what they thought of the game and updates and such, because there really wasn't any connection between the English players and Japanese players back then. There's a big disconnect, JP Ornery in the search comments, and they wouldn't invite you because of communication issues. But his mission was basically to put an end to that stigma of that what we had up back then towards us, and that we had towards them and they had towards us. But for good reason, though. I mean, if you read through the history pages, which we'll talk about here in a bit, that when NA was first released, they didn't want merged servers. They wanted JP only servers and NA only servers. They just wanted to keep within themselves and have their own community with the game, because they were out for almost a year before, probably even more than a year. I'm not too sure on the dates, before NA came along. And it just basically, they saw it as a bunch of noobs coming in, ruining their game, dying to monsters, losing the regions to beastmen, because if you get Signet and go die level 1, beastmen take over eventually. So like Ronfar and Saruta and Gustaberg were all beastmen controlled for quite a long time when the game first came out in America. So that's what Elmer's job, or not his job, his passion basically was, is to help us all reconnect with each other and realize that we'd all have a common interest in Final Fantasy XI. But what he first had on his website was a very lacking version of what it was like back then and what updates entailed when the game first came out in 2002 up until NA release and beyond, because most people didn't catch on and start playing until like Promathia, like myself. There wasn't very many NA. There's like hardly anybody import the game. Not many NA. I mean, if you import it, you basically knew how to read Japanese pretty much, because it wasn't in English yet. And you had to have a Japanese account to even play. So his first initial project was covering like 2002, 2004, and only minimal information was in there, not all conclusive, maybe like 10 entries per year, so maybe a total of 30 different entries. But I saw this, I'm like, wait, I wanted to make sure this history was preserved, and I wanted to make sure people, after the game's offline, can know what happened to us back then and what we went through. And I always remember seeing the threads, like on Auction House and Alakazam and Reddit even, asking about the good old days and what did I miss? I wish I could have played this back in 2004. What was it like back then? And tell me some stories and this and that. So after reading that in multiple threads, I'm like, something has to be done. There has to be like a common resource and a common destination to go see these things and see what people are talking about. So that's what made me want to retell the story that even I missed, because I started in 2004, so I missed 2 years basically. And even before that, up to launch, I missed all that. Because we didn't have YouTube back then. That was 2007, maybe 2008-ish.
Back in my day.
Yeah, it was like Rever, I think, was the only video for a hosting service. So that's basically the gist of why I wanted to do this.
Can I just set up a little bit for the Horizon players here? Because I think this is really interesting, and I think there's a lot of cool stuff here. So it's currently hosted on BG Wiki, correct? Your History of Vana'diel project?
Yes, and currently I am working on a layout to have my own website. So it's ffxihistory.com. So if you go there, it basically redirects to BG for now. But eventually I want to get it off of there because it's so limited in the website design and what I can do with it on the wiki itself.
Okay, so there's something I often have conversations with Horizon players about, just little things like, at what date was a certain patch where a certain, aspect of the game was added. For example, I was browsing through your History of Vana'diel project and I saw when they added EXP bonus to signets, just as like a page from like 2000 something. And I know it's often topic of conversation is like what is in era and what is out for the current time period we're in. So for Horizon players who are listening, you should definitely check this project out. I think you could probably click just about any page and, just really absorb some of the information that Funk has kind of like laid out in such a really absorbable, easy to read kind of way. And it's just really cool. So I just want to kind of set the stage as to what people might expect to see if they were to go to the website and how they'd find that.
We'll definitely have the links in the description as well for all of it. So we're going to make sure we have that in there because this is something I definitely want to have more eyes on for the history of the Vana'diel. So you've been working on it since you said 2004, or I know you said that's roughly when you started. Is at the same time you kind of got the passion about being able to get this up and running?
Oh no, I started the actual project in 2017. I started playing the game in 2004. I was editing it in secret at first, and initially it was one long page, like it's never-ending scrolling, like we have today. Like you go to a website and just scroll and scroll, but too many resources were used because the way the wiki works and the software, so it was lagging like hell. I don't like there's no way I can keep going like this. So I ended up breaking up into different years instead. When I make a website, it's probably going to be by year. I haven't really figured it out yet, but I have a few ideas in mind. I do want to do a search. I do want to steal SE's little project they have, kind of like the idea as far as clicking a link, you can tweet and link back to that certain article in the history page. Because right now there's no easy way to link a certain date unless you basically have to Control F and search the whole thing. But I do want to have easy to link to articles and maybe collapsible articles, because I did notice some of the entries are very monotonous, like the events of every year, like the Sword Festival and that kind of thing. So I do have plans to revamp the layout, and I think it was, it was one streamer, I'm not sure who it was, but they were basically reading it, and I was watching them read it. I'm like, wait a minute, they have to scroll up to look at the right column. That's kind of silly. So I'm going to do away with the left and right columns. So eventually it will look a lot better. But like I said, at first it was 2017 I started working on this. But in 2017, SE made one of the events. I think it was the 15th anniversary, and it was some kind of event that they brought back. The moon ball is the item in the game.
It's like a dome. It's like a dome on a base. Is that one? It's a furnishing.
I'm not sure.
Okay.
I think it looked kind of like a moki, like a little treat thing.
Okay.
But they basically used it in an event called Chasing the White Rabbit, and that was back in 2002. And when they suddenly put the item back in the game in 2017, people were like, wait, what the hell is this thing? This has been around forever, and what's this for? But I ended up linking the Moonball page to the history page on the event that they had back in the day. And people were like, oh, what's this history page? Oh, wow. So a player named Kylos shared it on Auction House. And initially, the post just took off, and there was like 40 likes or something crazy like that. So I ended up replying to it and said, oh, yeah, by the way, surprise, I've been working on this project. I was going to initially release it all at once, but it's not even done now as it is. So I'm glad that never happened, because it still wouldn't be released. So instead, I've just been doing year by year. I admittedly wanted to be further along at this point in time, like maybe to 2016, but life happens, So right now I've been working on 2014. I'm hoping to get that out by the end of June, next month. By the time this is released, it'll be June, but end of this month. For 2014 at least.
Being in 2014, what expansion, what most recent one have you actually come across in 2014, just to kind of get us retail players that have played in the past, where your kind of thought process is, or where you're in the timeline?
So it would be Seekers of Adeline. So Seekers of Adeline came out in 2013. So lo and behold, it is 10 years old this year, which is crazy to think about. So I'm just getting past Delve at the moment, which was definitely a shit show on its own. You can read 2013, it's already released, but with the whole relic weapons being nerfed, and then basically Delve weapons were better than relic weapons at the time, or ultimate weapons. I'm sure if you guys are playing then, you'd know about that. But it's basically, one of the memes was, do not throw it away, please, because high-tier battlefields weren't released when Delve was released. So there's a period in time where relic weapons were just worthless, and people could not use them because they all wanted Delve weapons, and item levels for relics did not exist yet. So it was a very bad thing that SE did in their timeline of the game and how they wanted to evolve the game. Now it's great, but back then they definitely should have thought about it before and made sure relic weapons were upgradable at the same time Delve was released. And I think a lot of players would still be playing back, or more would be playing now, but a lot less players would have quit back then, because 14 came out at that point in time, around the same time anyway. And a lot of people just said, screw this, I worked my butt off for this relic, and now it's worthless, I'm not going to play this game anymore. So that's definitely a reason why I think the population dwindled in the early 2010s.
Gotcha. Again, we keep coming back to the Horizon side of things because, again, Horizon's only 6 months or so old on here, and obviously you're in Seekers. It's been quite a project, and I guarantee from what I've felt when you're developing the history of Vana'diel project, you were like, all right, let's get all the info out. But as you dove into it, you realized how many more things that you didn't commonly know. Is there a certain part of lore or history or the development process that you personally wanted to be able to either give a shout out or something directly towards, or your favorite part of lore, I should say, with Vana'diel?
I have a bunch here. So one thing I want to mention is it also covers real life events. I had no idea back then, young kid as I was, that they had fan fests, they had fan gatherings back then, and like, oh dang, that's pretty cool. So I also made sure to include all the real life events and representation of Final Fantasy XI at the gaming conventions like E3 and all the other like video game awards back then. I do wanted to share something about this. And kind of jumping the gun a little bit here on the timeline, but the first time we saw LTU, they were showing off the graphics in C at I think it's an AMD convention. Showing off new graphics cards. This is the first time we ever saw what C looked like, and we didn't even know about this. I mean, we had no way of communicating this with each other, so it's pretty cool that right before I think it was early 2004, so before COP came out, they're showing off in the fidelity of a graphics card by using Final Fantasy XI. A couple of things. So for Zilart, first we'll talk about as my personal experience, I did make an event on Alakazam to run through all the Zilart missions in one day with an alliance. So I sat there recruiting 18 people to go out and do all the Zilart missions in one long marathon, one Saturday of one day. So as you can all imagine how that went, and not very well. So by the end of the day, we were down to almost one party. Started with 18. I think we even had more than 18 actually, because I figured, okay, we're gonna lose some people anyway. Let's go ahead and get more than 18. So it must have been like 24 people or so. And so you can all imagine where we lost most of the people were Ifrit's Cauldron going through there, sneaking invisible with the monuments. That was just hell.
Yep.
I remember having to go back for some people, and people would drop at the wrong spot, and they just said, "Oh, screw this," and died and left and logged out because of frustration and rage quit. But at the end of the day, I think it was about a party of us made it to Sky because we're down to the BCs. I think we did run a couple of BCs twice or a couple of fights twice or something. I'm not too sure anymore, but we ended up making it. And I think it took us maybe, I want to say about 26 hours to do the whole thing all in one run.
Damn.
That was definitely one of my fondest Zilart moments.
Yeah, so I mean, there's still, on Horizon, man, the Ifrit's Cauldron. What else? We had a low man group when we did the one in Yoator. There's the headstone there, the pilgrimage headstone. We had too few people and we got wiped. Luckily there were people fishing nearby and they came over and raised us. Like, yeah, even on Horizon, it's still like a thing. You gotta focus. You gotta have the right groups. It's a ton of fun.
I've ran through Ifrit's Cauldron 3 times. First time for my group, second time to grab somebody else through, and third time to grab another guy and have him go through it. It's been fantastic. I love it.
I sense sarcasm.
Yeah,
It was not fantastic.
And you only had to worry about how many people instead of a full alliance? Like
6.
Okay.
It's the drop downs, man.
Don't forget about the quicksand caves. I imagine Horizon, one Galk could open those doors, right? Is that how it still is?
Yeah, 3.
There we go. Yeah.
Yeah,
Keep
it's
it
like
sure to
brag about
Galka.
that was the shit back then. As Galka, I'm like, oh yeah, I guess I can open this for you. So I could go back and get everybody else and push them through, basically.
Just /sit on the
Yeah,
on
exactly.
the stone.
For that being kind of your memory trail on here, what about the with Zilart missions, the development process on the Final Fantasy on Square Enix's side of the Zilart missions? So what have you come across? Have you found anything specific or anything relative, or you're like, hey, I did not know that for the development process as ZM?
There are a few facts here I wrote down. I wanted to make sure I shared with you guys. One is more known, I suppose, than before. But back then, ninjutsu used to have a longer casting time. So Utsusemi took 8 seconds to cast, and they changed that to 1.5 seconds. So they basically made their own ninja tank, and that not many people know that. That's how it was back then. But
8 seconds?
it was 8 seconds to cast Utsusemi ni.
That's
And it's
longer
double-edged
than
sword, though.
Ichi, right? It's
It was
longer
longer
than
than
Ichi,
Ichi,
right?
yes.
That's interesting. I guess they thought they're giving you an extra shadow, right? Was it an extra shadow? Or wait, a ninja main?
Yeah, so,
It's 4 shadows
not-
instead of 3.
a ninja main, I'm not sure. It makes sense if it was, but better spell, longer casting time makes sense, right? That's how it is for everything else.
Mm-hmm.
But back then, tools were hard to find, and it was more expensive than Ranger to play Ninja, so it didn't quite take off at the time that they changed that. They're hoping it would be make Ninja more useful, because it was basically like early Zilart Summoner was just not very good. I mean, they just came out. People didn't have avatars. It was hard to get people to fight because they needed the fame. No one could help with the fight because they needed the fame.
Mhm.
And just forget about the low tier mission, or the level 20 caps. Those are hard as hell back then. They went after they introduced them. But yeah, it's definitely one of the little known things.
LTL,
Another one, I'm sure.
did you do the 20
go
caps
ahead.
in era, LTL?
I did. They were like, if you were gonna win, like you had to go in there with your 2-hour. You needed meds. You needed like Yagudo drinks and like Vile Elixir if you could get your hands on it. I mean, you probably couldn't, but High Ether was like the thing you could probably get, and you might not even win. You couldn't go in on the Avatar's day. Like if it was Ifrit, you couldn't go in on Fire's day, or you just get stomped. Yeah, it was really difficult. Like Horizon has trivialized those fights, but Era, those were absolutely bonkers. They were really hard to win.
Or did you remember the weather that you're talking about going in on the same days? I don't remember much of Summoner, but I do remember that you go on the same day, you might as well just chill and wait, or go ahead and leave and redo it, because you're gonna just get absolutely wrecked.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, obviously Horizon wanted to make all the jobs accessible to people, so that's why they kind of like toned down the level 20 versions. You know, it's sort of interesting how we get to kind of draw from 11's mistakes and like future patches they made to kind of create job balance, and kind of like take the best parts of those things and kind of re-give them to players like in the sort of era envelope. I personally didn't do the level 20 fights. I just did the high levels with other people, and made a group out of it. Working on Summoner now. It's level 21.
Oh, we
I
know.
never touched Summoner in 20 years of playing.
It's
Because you're a
fun, though.
Galka.
And this is why you fail.
I was a human
Oh.
retail, thank you.
Oh,
Oh, Funk, are you still Galka?
I'm still Galka, yeah. I have my
Okay.
OG character still.
Oh, sick.
I was
Once
gonna
you
say, I just recently did those cap fights on retail. I also added the pages in BG because there's like no information about them, because I wanted my mastery rank up. And I'm not sure if anybody out there doesn't know what this is. It's basically a rank to show how much EP and status you have, how many titles you have, how many things in the game you've completed. So because it's technically a quest, and technically it's in your quest log, I completed them, so I had that locked on my belt basically. And it wasn't as hard as I thought it would be now anymore. I'm sure back then like you guys said, it was difficult as hell. But with all the upgrades you have these days, you can't use trust now in the retail, of course, because level cap. But if you have meds, I got like Vile Elixirs, I got everything loaded up like crazy. The key basically is to cut it like crazy, stick your avatars out, and make sure you have good timing. But it still isn't a walk in the park anymore.
awesome. You got another Zilart mission one, or a ZM for the development? Because that
Yep,
8 second shadow threw me off. That really took me back on there from 8 seconds to 1.5. That's a major just change on that. I did not know that.
Oh yeah, I have at least looks like 4 more. Next big one is the Resticap synthesis into padded caps. So basically, back then, The primary way to make gil was fishing. That's why, yeah, probably right now and
It's pretty
Horizon as
good.
well, I'm not sure how it is.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm sure they probably fixed this because this was back in Zilart, so 2006 era, so they must have fixed this anyway. But one of the main ways is to fish up rusty caps and make them into padded caps, and NPC the padded cap, and that introduced guild into the economy because you're generating guild from NPC, you're not just switching it between characters. So fish spotting, the JPs called it sleep fishing, because basically people would put the characters there and go to sleep any times of the day and AFK and whatever else. And Rabao was the popular zone for this. So at any given time, in every world, you'd see 50 or more players fishing at a little pond in Rabao, just AFK fishing up padded caps. So the log would just scroll, person fish up padded caps. This is before alternate accounts and like dummy accounts were made. So these are main characters fishing back then. So you had all different kinds of levels and races and characters all decked out fishing all the time because their friends told friends, and it kind of stuck in the community. So they all were playing rusty caps because the rest of the fish, they just basically lost the catch or purposely did not fish it up because it was a waste of time because pad caps were so much more money. So there was no threat of monsters attacking you because out in the field you had stuff wander over and attack you. You could just AFK and no worries about dying and home porting. Didn't have to watch your screen either. But also the synthesis required light clusters or light crystals. The price of these clusters skyrocketed and people were farming sky like crazy in these clusters. That's the most common area to get them is the island and sky, right? Because there's no weather and they're always up. Because light crystals are hard to come by as well for monsters if you had Signet. So clusters were the way to go, and the prices were just astronomical. But the caps were nerfed in the September 14th, 2004 update. They did this by the probability of catching the rusty caps decreased, and the NPC sale also got reduced. It was still done. It was just less popular. You just didn't see as many people. People were like, "Oh, this is a waste of time now. I'm going to move on." But the hardcore botters were still there. But not until March 2007 did they change the NPC amount to 1 gil, and they also changed the ingredients for the padded cap. So it was like bronze or something now instead. So the rusty caps weren't even used anymore. So you basically NPC them for 1 gil, and they're worthless. That basically was the final nail in the coffin for that one. There were stories of players who made enough gil by fishing up these rusty caps and the padded caps. They basically capped the goldsmithing and smithing to max levels.
Jeez.
Even capped the character's gil with rusty caps alone.
What?
I guess botting, man, and then you just bought the synths too.
And we want to say that botting is definitely disencouraged on Horizon, and they make the ban waves come through. You saw the most recent. They said they hit 300 counts recently with it. So do not do that.
The price of those caps is nerfed here too. It's not worth your time, but it is.
Is it 1 gil?
I don't think it's 1 gil
for the rusty cap.
For the
2007.
The rusty cap I think might be 1 gil, but the padded cap that it makes, I don't think is worth. I don't know the exact numbers, but I know that that's one of the things that have been nerfed, like Holy Water, for example, which got a similar nerf treatment later on.
Oh yeah, I love the Holy Water back with Alchemy.
Oh yeah, we were alchemists. That's right. I got to do the Holy Water for a while before that nerf hit myself. It was a lot of gil, man. I forget what the original value was because right now it's like 143 on Horizon. I think it was like 500 or something back then before the nerf.
Yeah, I forget. It's something I should add to my history though. It's hard to find some of this stuff. It's hard to find these resources, and I can't tell you how much scrounging I had to do especially back then. Right now, I'm running into the problem where Discord is going to come by soon, so I'm running out of forum threads to look at for history facts. Because Discord's hard as hell to search. I don't want to go back and search months and pages of millions of text messages for that. So it's gonna be more difficult. I have 3 more fun facts to share with Zilart if you want.
Oh, 3 more! Wow, Zilart.
3 more.
Yeah, come on.
Okay, well, I guess it's 4. So to go along with the fishing, I know I'm talking like crazy here. I'm basically the one-man show. I'm sorry, guys.
You have info. That's the reason why. For the Zilart missions, that's exactly where we're at in Horizon. Zilart and Chains of Promathia. Because any of these that haven't been patched for Horizon or changed, or any of the stuff in it's just a history lesson of Vana'diel, because there's a lot of people on Horizon that didn't play retail, or a lot of people that are like, this is my opportunity to get a first time experience. So the whole motivation you had with pulling a history lesson out, this is good for them to know where some of these things came from and why some of these changes occurred. So yeah, knock it out. Let me hear another.
This is totally inconclusive. So there's a whole lot more fun facts. These are just the ones I picked out that I liked the most. So I will highly recommend you reading through everything. But next one I have up is up until the Zilart era, or a certain patch. I forget where I pulled this from. But moving while activating an item would cause it to be consumed with no effect. So if you accidentally were walking along and used like a scroll, it was gone.
Mm-hmm.
Screw that.
Just like paralyze, paralyze was an issue, but this is just if you're moved. So if you know how you activate a warp ring or whatever in retail and you move to make it stop because you don't want to warp, this is just the charge consumed. No more. It's gone.
Oh. Okay.
That
So
would piss me off pretty quick.
Oh yeah.
Would that do that with charges as well, like a warp cauldron?
Yeah. Anything that
You lost the charge.
The warp cudgels were after this, because the warp cudgels, don't forget, those were CRP because those used anima, which came from Promathia.
Yeah.
So this is before warp cudgels were introduced. But we're talking scroll of Utsusemini, we're talking scroll of erase, those kinds of things. Those would just basically be gone if you moved while you were using it.
Silent oil.
Silent oil, yeah.
Oh,
that's costly, but
my gill.
That's exactly. Oh no.
The silent oil wouldn't piss me off as much as going to use knee and just accidentally tapping something and it's gone.
So on Horizon, that brings up a question I have. At some point in Final Fantasy, they changed it so sneak and invisible are long durations. Do you have like the 5-second sneaks still over there?
Yeah.
They wear off after 5 seconds?
You can get less than a minute, or you can get, I think the minimum is 1 minute for a cast or using one of the consumables. But I've not seen it pop up for less than 1 minute.
Yeah.
I think on Nozomi, I think people were talking about that you could get like 30 seconds sneaks or like 10-second sneaks. I've heard people talking about that, but no, Horizon doesn't have that, fortunately.
Yeah, it's an RNG. It's pretty much between like a minute and change to like, you'll get the occasional 5 minute and you'll see it tick down to 4. So something like right above 5, somewhere in that range. Even as spoils too.
Spell?
Both.
Because I do remember back then the items were more reliable, let's say. But I do remember the days no one has sneak and invisible because they're so expensive for the powders and oils. So the white mage had to sneak everybody. Right after they cast sneak starts to wear off.
We got a buddy.
It's like 5-second sneaks.
We got a buddy who's a red mage, like in our group, in our like statics that we do, and we call him the sneak mage. and the black mage in our group, it's the travel mage. Escaping us everywhere, warping us everywhere.
I'm happy that it's not Horizon. Isn't that? I think they did bring over and actually make it what is, I would say, comfortable. Because a lot of that stuff would be just absolute garbage nowadays.
Yeah, for sure. With that change to no longer losing the item, that's when they add the delay when using items. So when you're sitting there grabbing your ass trying to use your rings or whatever it is, that's where that came from. That's why they have that for some items now. So it became, but another double-edged sword. Even though you don't lose the item, medicines hardly had any use, because if you ever played out on the Final Fantasy, medicines were amazing. All the potions you had, they're just lifesavers. But that's why it's so different in 11, because of this. One of these changes is one of the main reasons.
Cool.
So that is the last I had of Zilart.
All right.
That is rough.
You imagine doing that Effort's Cauldron run with 5-second sneaks all the time?
Oh yeah.
I would never do it. That's what would happen. I'd just rage quit.
Yep. That's what happened to me. People rage quit.
That's why you started with like 20 people, though, because you're going to phase them out. And if they can't deal with the 5-second sneak and invis through Effort's Cauldron, then, I mean, they're never going to make it in-game.
I mean, to be fair, I didn't know what I was up against back then. I'm like, this is a piece of the cake. I have everything listed here. I have a million I have my computer, my laptop over here. I have all these things pulled, all the resources pulled up. I know exactly where I'm going, what I'm doing, like all the maps. This would be awesome. This would be a breeze, but no, not quite.
So how about COP then? What did you discover as you did your work in that sort of era, that expansion and its releases?
So before we get into that, I have a couple stories from my character I'd like to share if you guys don't mind.
Sure.
Go for it.
So one of the things I remember from back then is all the areas that were locked behind the missions, like Revern BO1, Revern AO1, Sacrarium, those kinds of things. It was definitely a treat to have access to those. And because they were locked behind the missions, even Luface Meadows, because people had to do Prometheans, everyone couldn't get there, and it's just such a treat to be there. And this is why the JP community was asking for more places to level, because leveling was a big part of the game for them, and to get level 75 was basically them in lots of players' minds winning the game. And they were looking for more places to level, but because of all these level caps and because everything was locked behind missions, it really was not what they wanted for an expansion. And a lot of JP players were very disappointed in the expansion. One good thing about the expansion was a little known fact. This is a bonus one. I didn't have this written down. I just thought of it. That the entire expansion, except for after COP 8.1, it was all released day one when COP came out. You didn't have to wait for these updates like we had to do now for every expansion after COP. You go through every single mission up until you can get C day one if you really wanted to. But obviously that didn't happen because of the difficulty. But that's not, after that, it was lots of criticism for Treasure of Valurgan when it came out, because there's hardly any missions. People were like, why would you release an incomplete game? Kind of like how we have these days. The games they come all glitched to hell, and all these horrible game stopping, save messing up glitches were just all present. Now it's basically coming full circle now. So that's something that we took for granted back when COP was released, because no one could do it. So they just sat there forever, and SE closely monitored the situation and saw how difficult they were, and they slowly made difficulty easier. Something to think about that most people didn't realize.
Yeah, I remember jumping into the Promies kind of soon after release, and that's not necessarily a far mission in, but I don't remember ever like waiting after that. Just when I could get groups to do the next missions, right?
Yeah. So their development philosophy was, when the game was first released, the storyline through COP was already completed. So they already knew what they're going to do with this. So that's why we had level 25, I think it's 25 or 30 cap Promies. And then we slowly had level 30, level 40, 50, progressed all the way up. That's why it was like that, basically. So something to think about as well.
Well, COP is definitely, I would say, the more of a struggle fest on there. And with it being, you saying, dropping all the way to 8.1 immediately out the gates, I do see where it could be, you could do it, but it's too incredibly difficult to be able to go through all of it at once on this. So I like how they paced it afterward. I do like the pacing. And they're talking in Horizon about maybe doing that for treasures in the future as well. A little bit of treasures here, a little bit of treasures there, and kind of pace it outward. But they're also, just like what SC was back in the day, monitoring the situation of people's progress through Zilart and COP before we even dive into the treasure side of things. So it's there, but the eyes are on the front end. And that's why we wanted to be able to bring you in and talk about the front end kind of things with the Zilart missions in COP.
I do think it's a good idea that they release it a little bit at a time, because you don't want to give everybody everything. They could do the missions all at once. There's no reason really not to, honestly. But the content, like salvage and assault ranks, those can be slow. Like if people spread people out instead of, because everyone's gonna go for salvage. People at least have more things to do if they spread it out a little more than just release everything at once. Because it makes more sense to do that.
Right. I like that development process on there.
A couple of my fond memories I have from the COP era I wrote here. I don't remember if you guys remember, but Bard Mazurka, the hate generation on that.
I was looking at that page on the history of Vana'diel before this. Yeah. Because that is nerfed on Horizon.
That's good, they nerfed it. But basically, it was a ridiculous, I don't know how much enmity it is. We did not know like CE and VE values back then, but it was a ridiculous amount. The more people you hit with Mazurka, the more hate you got. it was stronger than any kind of ninja or ninja paladin anything. So Bard Ninja, basically. I was Bard Ninja, and I was tanking worms. I had my fire set for Tiamat. I was up there with the ninjas. I was like a main tank. Like if I died, get me back on weekend, I'll get hit after like one berserker, basically. So that was definitely a fond memory of mine. That was right when after level Bard, and I got all the Bard gear. I remember I loved the Byakko Sarate over a ninja, and that was some drama that day, let me tell you, because I only had Bard and Paladin leveled.
What do you think, LTL? The next Tiamat?
I don't know what you're talking about. I don't know what's Tiamat.
Whenever, I don't know when the next one is, but whenever that is.
I mean, I don't know. I don't know what you're talking about. Definitely not in about 27 minutes. Definitely not. Definitely not.
So basically, Mazurka was hitting like a benediction. It was like
Basically, yes. And the more
creating
people
the
you hit,
heat.
the better. So if your tank party just conglomerated on top of you, you're hitting 6 people, including yourself. So that was, I want to say it was probably 6 or 7 provokes is one Mazurka. And you could do this well, it depends on your haste. You could do it probably every 45 seconds.
Holy shit.
Yep. So just pure bomb the Bard. Doesn't matter how much hate you get. You're not going to get hate taken off of and not going to come kill you. It's going to stand that Bard.
That's so funny. Yeah, so Horizon's done a couple of nerfs. They've nerfed some things like Blind doesn't generate as much enmity as it did in Era. Mazurka doesn't. And also, there's like an overall nerf to Utusemi in general, where it basically, the cast and recast time are longer than they were in Era. And they just wanted to make sure not to have the, X/Nin tank be better than the main tanks in the game, like Paladin. Or even Ninja Main, then because in Era there was everything, right? I had heard there was a Bard/Ninja thing, but also like Red Mage/Ninja was huge. All that fast cast, being able to get those shadows out very quickly. So they've kind of utilized those nerfs to kind of like shape the game into more its traditional form of these are the tanks. The Bard is the Bard.
I mean, obviously, those things were never intended in the first place. So it's
Right.
a good thing. It's a good thing they avoided using those back to the way they were.
You just thought I quit tanking when I switched to Bard.
It's /Bard is now your new Enlight spell since they got rid of the enmity generation on Enlight. How long did that Bard time frame last with the Mazurka?
Well, at first wasn't known. It must have been a mistake they found it in the first place because I'm pretty sure it was out for quite a while, ever since implementation. I'm sure. I don't remember when it was nerfed. I do have an entry on my history page, and also pictures of me tanking worms right next to the nerf page. So I don't honestly not sure, but I want to say 2006. I could be wrong. I probably am wrong.
I think I literally have the page here, but yeah, you have pictures of yourself tanking.
Yeah,
tanking
luckily
worms?
those weren't lost.
Okay.
Yep. So I have a picture. My picture on Jormungand and Virtua, or not Virtua, Jormungand and Tiamat. I couldn't do Virtua because of the strategy.
If you want to hop in the Level Sync Discord at some point after this and toss some pictures in, I'm sure people would appreciate.
Oh yeah, I'll do that.
Perfect.
A couple more memories I have, not related to Mazurka, but back then in general. I was in a Link show. I was playing on Sylph. That's my first server. I still am on Sylph now. I did jump around to Asura and a couple other worlds, but now I'm still on Sylph. But I was in a Link show called Black Roses. The leader was notorious for hacking, basically. He loved all the third-party programs. Disclaimer, don't do this on Horizon. We're talking about retail here. But his name is Crazy Pluto.
Don't do it on retail either.
Don't do it on retail. There you go. This is 2004, 2005. This is not present day. But one of the funny things he did, a couple of memories I have, is we all did all the 3 kings. I remember our first time going to Behemoth. He was the one who did research all these strategies and what we should do. Like he talked to us about Fafnir and how tanks should be using the blink earring to blink the whole party, or to blink themselves, so they have shadows so they won't die. I'm not sure if the blink earring is popular right at the moment on Horizon, but basically it's the item you use and you get shadows. Anyways, when we were in Behemoth's Dominion, he hacked on top of the walls, and he was up there, and he's like, "Oh, I found a lake over here, and oh, I found this and that," and people could see him up on top of the walls. Like if you were looking over there, people pointing to him and laughing between windows. It was just hilarious. But he did get reported a few times. I'm sure he's gotten his fair share of bans back then. I don't remember. But other thing he did is Akiran. You know, guys, do you have the random ass teleporter at Kieran where you teleport to Kieran, you might teleport to the other spot, or is it always to Kieran?
No, here Horizon. I think Horizon. It can be either or.
Either or.
I don't know. Like I may be talking out of my ass here, like because I've gone up there a few times and it's always taken me directly to Kieran. So it might, but I think I've heard tale of people getting sent to the other place. So it might be actually era accurate. I'm not sure.
So at some point in time, I'm not sure when, they basically changed it. So you could either go to Kieran or across the shrine. So you had to keep going in and out of the shrine. You could try hundreds of times, or not hundreds. Let's say 10 or so times, maybe the worst, maybe 12. Some people had horrible luck. So you couldn't start Kieran until your whole alliance got there. It took at least 2 hours to gather, generously 2 hours to gather up to be able to finally pop it. But we were sitting there waiting for our whole alliance to come through. He was sitting on his ass. He was an elven. You know how the elvens sit with the arm up on their knee like a little smartass? He was sitting there and he was hacking around. So he was like moving on his ass, scooting around like a dog would scoot around on the carpet, trying to clean up his ass. So it was just hilarious. And he's like, yeah, the only reason I do this is just because people get a laugh, and this game shouldn't be serious and this and that. So it's a fond memory I'll never forget. Just the Smirk Elven with his old hat, Ranger, sitting there, scooting around on his butt, waiting for everyone to gather for Kieran.
Sounds like a Sandorian, I'm not going to lie.
Yeah, I think it was Sandorian. Speaking of sky farming, behavior. Those are good days, though. All the Ulikumi camping and I think you guys just changed the diorite over there, right?
Yes.
That's what I saw.
We're on diorite now.
Yeah.
Ulikimi was, I mean, you know, you wait, you try to get the claim. I mean, luckily they had a system in play where the person who killed the what are those called? Golems? Are those golems?
Yeah, the golems that are up there.
Yeah, the person who killed it, the aura statue. Yes, that mob. The person who killed it got claim on Uli if that was the statue, if that was the spawn, if that was your lottery spawn. Yeah. So
sometime.
Not everything is perfect, you know, glitch fest. But one time we were up there and there was 5 of us and 5 of another link shell. And I made a joke that we were playing Uli ball because like we would try to get the claim that was on their side, like it's their goal. You know, the aura statues, they spawn in like kind of zones. And it was like playing zone defense because it's like, okay, we think it's going to spawn over there next. So we need 3 claimers over there. And it was just, it was a lot of fun before the diorite, but it obviously still aggravating.
Any kind of kings or sky or anything like that, yeah. Quetch and LTL are the ones to talk to on that. Cal and myself haven't gotten there quite just yet. We're making progress to it, but yeah, I can't wait to be able to see some of those that you're talking about. The basketball zone defense, that sounds like modern day blitzball.
Can you hide behind the net and have the other team just freak out and not score at all?
We need Keepa. Where's Keepa?
Jex kick and you win.
Oh yeah. One more story I have about before I continue on here.
All right.
So back in the day, you know, where I was all totally into Endgame, we're camping Tiamat. My buddy Techie, he was my fellow Galka Paladin in a lake shell. Tiamat popped. It was 3:30 a.m. on a weekday. So naturally, I was sleeping, and the hole was the rest of the link shell, you know. Anyways, young 15-year-old self, whatever, back then, I didn't have a cell phone in 2006, 2007. So I shared my house phone number because our link shell had a bunch of phone numbers to call if in case an emergency, which emergencies back then, you know, worm spawn, come kill it. So Techie, he called my house phone. My mom answered. And he's like, is Funk there? And she was like, what? And he's like, because he didn't know my real name. He said, is Funk there? I want to talk to him. He said, wrong number. Don't ever call back here again. And hung up on him. So he was embarrassed as hell after that. He would not call me anymore. I had to get my own cell phone. So needless to say, we didn't kill TM at that night, but I did wake up at some point after that, and I did get on to kill it because he must message me on, I think it was Trillion was the thing back then with the AOL AIM and something else all together in one. ICQ. Yeah, Trillion was the bomb. So yeah, we got on and we did kill it, but yeah, sharing house phone numbers and calling up people's parents at 3:30 a.m. was definitely a 2006 era story to go in the books.
We're talking about the development history of Vana'diel. And by the way, just when you said the sharing the phone numbers, Cal smiled because he just got mine. He got my digits just recently on there, and he's been harassing me, sending pictures of Gideus because we've been camping in him there lately. But the development history of Vana'diel, talking about the Zilart missions and Chains of Promathia, but I know that's been a passion project. But you keep bringing up BG Wiki. Are there any other things that you've done, or what's your involvement with BG Wiki?
So I am involved in all aspects of the BG team. So it's basically all major decisions that were to be made for what we should do, focus on, and things we should do. Like just recently, we've started dark mode. I wasn't really too keen on that. I thought it was too much work. But one of the other team leaders is basically heading that up and letting him do his thing. So it's a very requested feature was dark mode, and it's going along pretty well. So if you basically register an account, you can go under your settings in the top right. If you log in, you can go to preferences and change it to the dark theme. Because before, basically, we have our browser extensions to mock a dark theme. You know how people have Discord dark and light these days, phones dark and light. So that's one of the recent projects we've been working on. I tend to take on large projects. One of the recent things I've done, I'd have to say, would be I'm going through the job pages because we updated the software to a new version. So our formatting basically was quasi formatting because we got left with a big mess basically. Because BG wasn't started until 2008, I want to say. That's another story all in its own. But a lot of the projects that we had to be doing, because basically all the pages were hard coded. So I'm not sure if people are familiar with HTML development at all, but all the colors were basically on each page. So if we didn't have any kind of CSS, which is basically the rules that tell a page how to display, and everything's hard coded. So we had to go through every single page, and that's what we're doing now is changing things to be mobile friendly. So if you pull up on a phone, it flexes correctly and isn't all stretched out. So you have to do like a horizontal scroll, and we're also making sure that things look nice based on the theme you have. So if you go up and pull dark mode, for instance, and switch back and forth, it switches to light and dark. Because before, when we first implemented dark mode, lots of things were white because they're hard-coded in the page. That's why we always were against it on going in and actually doing this project. But it's been lots of work, and props to Positron for doing all this, most of this work on heavy lifting on all of this project for us. But for my role, I tend to mostly do update days, all the version updates, which basically last one from what we've seen, or pretty much will be this last week. There's not going to be much. We're basically going to maintenance mode. We probably will have a few new events, like we'll have master trials and such. But now I stream the updates, and we just bullshit around and talk about the changes and what we expect and hopes and dreams for the future. But that's basically my role in BG itself. But I do tend to edit random pages. But mostly I focus on updates and new items and such. I do have a couple projects I want to work on more so, but updates are basically my cup of tea.
How did you get started working with the wiki? Like what drew you to doing that effort, putting that effort in?
So it was 2012. I quit the game in 2009. Like all of us, we all took our little breaks. 2009 was the end of Wings of the Goddess, and it was stagnant and boring, and right before BC came out, basically. So I missed the whole level cap increase. I probably would have stopped playing at that point in time if I saw that. But I came back in late 2012. And my first big project, I was really into crafting when I came back because I wasn't into craft. I was into alchemy before. And in 2014, they raised the cap to 110 for crafts. It's from 100. So I was really big into crafting. I wanted to make sure I made money, and I had a couple mules. So I began by in BG by realizing that the synthesis recipes were incredibly lacking. So I started with the goldsmithing page. Like they had no recipes at all from 40 to 90. They had maybe, I'd say, 40 recipes total, and we have hundreds of recipes per craft. So I started by filling out those pages, the main crafting pages. And after that, I moved the recipes over to the individual pages. So like if you look up holy water, the recipe is there and how to make the holy water. I added all those into there. So I went item by item, line by line, and added all those recipes in there. And people, naturally, that's lots of edits. So the admins back then saw what I was doing, and they saw the contributions I was making, and eventually I was asked to have a further role in the development of the website, and I was being asked for opinions and such, and it kind of took off from there.
So they reached out to you?
They did reach out to me because if you go to recent history, you can see the last few edits that were made and the people's names. And back then, people hated BG because it was just an elitist asshole place to go, and everyone had a vendetta against BG. So lots of people would go on and purposely blank pages and remove data and make it incorrect on purpose because they wanted people to go to FFXI because BG is trying to step in and go to a neutral role and such, and that's how BG was always hated. And I mean, back at one point in time, it was invite only to the forums, and people saw that as withholding information from the game, and that's basically a stigma BG got. Because I'm sure some people might remember big kills back in BG. If you type in big kills in BG Wiki, it says we don't talk about big kills. Be kind of like Fight Club. Don't talk about Fight Club. It was essentially.
I don't know that meme.
Know what this was.
Yeah, no, I don't remember that one.
So big kills was a list. You could sign up your link shell. I think it was unverified, or you could also verify your kill. You could basically say how many times you killed King Behemoth, how many times you killed Tiamat, how many times you killed Kieran, this and that. And if you verified your kill with like a screenshot or something like that, the drops, then they'd add it to the rankings. And it basically was like, how Final Fantasy Auction House has a ranking now, essentially like that, just for EP and status. But it ran maybe for, I'd say, a few months on BG back in 2006-ish, 7-ish, something like that.
That's funny.
Yeah. One of my first big projects.
That sounds really toxic.
Yeah, it was toxic as hell.
Yeah.
That's just 11 back in the day, It was just all out for yourself and didn't tell with everybody else. As long as you got your items, still link shell banks, screw it.
So I should be keeping an eye on maybe my email or something like that, because obviously the amazing work I did with the wiki page for the clamming, they're going to be reaching out to me anytime now to be as involved as what you are. Is that what you're saying?
Well, I don't. Oh yeah, for the Horizon Wiki you're talking about, because I don't see anything on the retail clamming. It's still pretty blank, if you ask me.
I'm going to work on it. I like doing it. It was a trial and error experience on there, but I was like, as soon as I'm in there putting the docs in and changing the page and grabbing what I could and be able to kind of update it, I was like, this is a lot of fun. I need to hit up Funk and see what he's been up to. And speaking of what you've been up to on here, we're talking about, you mentioned something about live streaming, like the DAT files or something. Do you mind kind of explaining that, or the process of what you do on, I believe it's Twitch, right?
Yeah, so every update, so they started it back in 2010-ish, let's say. Septimus was a BG admin on the forum as well as the wiki. He was one of the founding admins in the wiki. He developed the original tools that I use today. They're basically local files, and you need to run Apache on your home PC. And all the files are written in PHP 3. So these custom files we use, they parse the DATs. Basically, you pull the information from the game after you get the update with pull utils. It's a program made way back in 2000, I want to say 2003, 2004 by a person named Pebbles. And it's been around ever since. Windowware took it over, and they've hardly been maintaining it at all. It's barely functional. So if pull utils is broken, which it is now, if they ever change the DAT format, pull utils will break, which will cause me to need to fix pull utils before. It's short for play online utilities before I can man the DATs. So what the custom software does that we have is you copy and paste the data files from the DATs into the program, and it parses everything and spits it out in a text database-esque file, in a TXT file, pretty much, with brackets between each chunk of data. It's like you have, for instance, you have the singular name of an item, so Aegis, the plural name Aegis, well, it would be Aegis. And you have like the flags, then you have the jobs it can use, the description, etc. And the utilities that we have reads that data and it spits out information that automatically can be used on the wiki. So it's basically, you can copy and paste everything that it gives you and paste it into a file name on the wiki and automatically make the page. So that's how I can easily get these files up to date so quickly and upload these images, because when you also have the data in these files, the images are made. So it reads the files and it makes the images. Each letter and character on the image is an actual image file. So an A is the letter A as an image. So it puts all these images together and it mimics the look of the game itself, basically. And Septimus made these files back then in 2010-ish. So thanks to him, he really is the reason BG took off as much as it did, because we had blank pages that were able to be edited in such a way. And if we didn't have these in the automatic generation, there's no way BG would be what it is today. But since then, we've had different things added to the game. The files are based, like play online utilities is basically like barely functional, and it's like a band-aid. Band-aids upon band-aids. You know how it goes.
Right.
I have a kitty in my face. So since 2010, and I got the files from him, and I made additional changes to these images and to make the utilities we use still functional to this day. Like I had to make the backgrounds larger because we have all the stats barf on these retail these days. Like we have strength and skills and all this crap. Big long ones. So I had to make custom images. That's how I made the watermark in the background, because FFXI Encyclopedia was taking our images and using them over on their website.
I was going to ask you about the watermark and when that goes on.
That's why BG has all the watermark on there, because I was sick of that. I'm like, oh, screw this. I'm just going to regenerate all of our files. So I made all new files back. So basically it's a background. So it's all blank images. So you have the icon, the little gray box in the upper left for the icon. The rest is just blank. So I made those larger. I incorporated the new icons, like I mentioned. Item levels weren't introduced back then. And that basically broke the DATs, because Polar Online Utilities did not know how to read the DATs after item levels were introduced. So we had to go into Visual Studio Code and just go change Polar Online Utilities to make sure it worked again and read the DATs properly. Superior level were not introduced back then. So I also added that to the DATs and to the program. Like Rune Fencer and Geomancer weren't there. So I've been basically making this program work for all these years, and luckily, knock on wood, it hasn't broken yet for quite a while. So that's basically the secrets behind how we get the information for BG pretty quickly. So, and I have started streaming. I started streaming in 2018 and 2019, because before then I had some shitty DSL at my house, and at that point in time, the broadband project here in Minnesota took off, and they started bringing broadband to rural areas, and my town was luckily one of the first ones to get higher speed internet. So at that point in time, I could finally have decent upload to stream, so I started doing that.
So a little bit of context again for Horizon players who have probably been to BG Wiki, but there's players from all sorts of places that come and play on this server. So the streams that Funk runs, he's basically, as the Final Fantasy XI updates are coming to the current retail, scraping all of that new data that comes in and checking it for any new items, new quest dialogue. You're looking for all sorts of things.
So you have general items, which is basically like the crystals, no, not crystals, items in your inventory, like quest items and synthesis materials, that kind of thing. You have usable items, which is like crystals, medicine. You also have armor, which is the wearable armor you use, and weapons, and also key items and new missions. We can look at the dialogue, which isn't much that we do with that in the wiki, but we just look through there for any kind of new hints and such of quests and missions. But essentially, those 6 things are what update on the wiki after each update.
Yeah, and so
And
now
I've come to
go ahead.
I've come to the philosophy that if you build it, they will come. So if you build a blank page, someone will come along and edit it and fill in information. So I always make sure all the voracious resurgence missions are all there blank, and someone will come along and edit it. So as long as you have the basics there, BG is big enough these days that people will come and fill it out for you.
Yeah, so this is really cool to me to now I understand better because I've been to a number of your streams as somebody who had been playing retail for a while, and it's kind of interesting that you're using software to kind of generate those items and those things for people, so you can populate the wiki quickly, so then people can either get to work working on pages, or you just have the items up there that people are going to want to look at anyway. And those that is on Twitch. We'll have, obviously, for those of you who are watching this, there will be Funk's Twitch link here on the screen, but it'll be linked down below as well if anybody's interested in that kind of thing. Although we feel like it may be a little light because retail is kind of hitting. They just finished releasing a very large storyline, but I'm sure you'll be able to catch Funk at some point streaming that kind of stuff if you have an interest in the technical aspects of the way FF11 works.
Yeah, we've been trying to keep the utilities basically BG only. So I've been trying to somewhat keep it under wraps, but updates are almost gone now. So that's why I wanted to talk a little bit more about it and just tell people how it works and just to learn what it was. Because people ask me all the time, how do you do this or what's this? One thing I was also going to say is to bypass when you go, if you remember on retail, you go into plan line and you can't click play because it's grayed out and it says can't play during maintenance.
Right.
I'm sure we all were there in all those weird ass chat rooms and play online, like the Yahoo chats back in the day. So to skip over the whole play button, because eventually it changes into a check version button for retail to download the new files. What you do before that is when you're in play online, you can purposely delete a DAT file. So what I do is I delete rom00.dat. And you click check version. When you check version, it checks all your local files and it checks to see if you're missing a file. In my case, I was missing 0.dat. So that's how it pulled the information from the server before the check file button was up in Play Online. So that's how I was able to get, and still on to this day, usually able to get the files before anybody else and get a head start in digging into them.
I remember sitting in your stream multiple times when the servers were down, and I'm just watching and waiting, like he's gonna have it, and I'm sitting here spamming, trying to get the check version on there. And before mine even comes up, you're already posting all the new gear and the new backs from Ambuscade and everything that were coming out. And I always got amazed by it because it was the new, and it was the first time seeing these items, and I'd scroll through and look for any kind of dancer gear, and I'm looking at it and be like, oh, that's pretty good, or oh, well, it got me so excited because the DAT files you would find before it's ever displayed anywhere. So it felt like I had an inside track watching your stream for anything that's going to be on the wiki page or in the game before I even get into the game. So that's your streams held a special place for me.
So if you remember back in the day, if you logged out at a king during maintenance to go camp it after the maintenance, if you logged in and people were already sitting there fighting it, you know what they did to get in there sooner before you.
Oh.
That makes more sense.
Yeah, because this was always a thing ever since I could remember.
See, us PS2 players, man, we didn't have any of that. Claimed Fafnir once on Red Mage, man. Everybody was like, how'd you do it? I was like, chain spell.
Yeah, chain spell, yeah.
Yeah, so I want to be able to kind of circle back on being able to say or ask, do you have any other like little known facts with the COP or Zilart missions or anything of those that we are currently in the Horizon world?
So I would say a couple, 5 maybe. I'll try to make it a little quicker. So September 22nd, 2004 is when COP was released. A little known fact is the registration server, because when we bought the game, you got the little code, the serial number that you had to enter on your play online. The registration server died again. It died back in Zilart when it was first released because everybody was trying to register their code. And the Japanese players called this the retry festival because you click there and sit there and click retry to register your code. That's how the name came about. But it's kind of funny that they made the same mistake as Zilart. You think they would somehow change it, and they're flabbergasted. Oh, how this happened? This is news to us. Never happened before. And our servers are top of state of the art, and how this happened? So that's something that we tend to forget. They also called it the Whoosh Festival because the play online sound that would make the whooshing when you go between screens. So that's no name for it.
Whoosh Festival.
Just to retry and to type in your code. So another glitch that I had that recurred from Zilart was you could buy new area maps endlessly, the key items from the NPCs. So if you went to buy it, it'd give it to you, but it wouldn't disappear from the list. So you could go buy it again endlessly. It's another thing that occurred in Zilart. So like, how could they make the same mistakes twice? Multiple mistakes between expansions. Who knows? One of the glitches that was out first released was you could go directly to Mavalpos right when the COP was released. There's no storyline that was hidden. You could just walk in there from Gustavert, basically. So a few days after the expansion went live, it was discovered that the Mavalpos water was sold from an NPC for less than it was sold to a shop for. So players would flock to this NPC and buy the Mavalpos water, and turn around and resell it to the same NPC for more gil than they bought it for. So it's endless gil generation.
Ooh.
So all you got to do is a couple of simple clicks. On the developer side at Square Enix, there was repeated 4 system messages, because you know how system messages, maintenance tune or whatever. It said unauthorized use of bugs may be subject to punishment. So the emergency maintenance on September 27th, which was 5 days afterwards, fixed the issue. So there's 5 real life days where people were generating unlimited gil just by a couple of mouse clicks, pretty much. Although the exploit was discovered by mistake, players criticized Square Enix, saying it was their own fault, like poor debugging, the poor responsiveness of the developers, and delay in solving the problem were all valid arguments people had. But the punishments were harsh. Like they were like bannings, and they just didn't take the gil away. They basically straight ban people. Because back when WoW was released, if a glitch was discovered in World of Warcraft, most of the time you just basically got your count re-rolled back, or they took the items away from you, not just banned you. This carried over to the salvage bans, basically. The same thought of mind. That's as in the future for now. For Horizon, anyway. Another NPC exploit. This is the more known one. This is also not very well known. So in Tabnasia, there's an exploit with NPCs Migrin and this is an elven name, Misiliu and Tabnasia's Höyfold.
Okay.
It's NPCs, they sell the Baron gear. The Baron legs, hands, feet, and those subligers for 8 million gil.
The Dragoon set.
Yeah, the Dragoon set, yeah. So you basically had to be in COP Chapter 4 or higher. So due to the mission difficulty, it took players quite a long time to find this glitch. And because it had to be through the aqueducts, through lots of river and stuff to get there. So the sale price of these items were ridiculously high due to what developers called for lore reasons. Because in the lore, when you go to Tabnasia, you're not supposed to have any visitors because it's supposed to be a secluded area in the game. So you got here through the Prometheans, basically, through the updrafts. And gil was incredibly valued to the NPCs here. So that's why these things were sold for so high. The issue was, however, that NPCs would buy items back for more than they sold them for. So again, the Mavalpos water issue. So if you had enough gil to afford these items, you could this earned basically 50,000 gil per resale. You have to buy initially if you had the buy-in money,
Damn.
pull it back for 50k more. So
Jeez.
the exploit injected billions of gil into the economy in every server. By the time it was fixed, the damage was basically already done.
Mhm.
So it was known as the Baron exploit. It is widely believed that this is the reason for the 2005-2006 hyperinflation. So like Hyperinflation plus 1 was 25 million gil. Scorpion Harness plus 1 was 22 million. Gold Ingot stacks were like 3 million. Just ridiculous numbers like that.
I was just complaining about a hobby being 1.7.
Oh yeah. Oh, that's the NQ?
NQ, yeah.
What's the plus one?
I didn't even bother to look because I have 600k to my name. I'm not going to look at something even more I can't afford.
It's like
It's
6
called-
or 7 million right now.
It's called window shopping, DA.
I just want to look at the
It's
shoes, not
possible.
just to look.
Wasn't there some glitch issues on Horizon for
Or-
Gil at all?
There
I'm not sure.
was
We
early
have to see it,
on.
but
There was early on, yeah.
Well-
I mean, if you want specifics, definitely, I have a video on it. It's more fresh in my memory, back then. But basically, there was some. They were fishing infinitely, I think.
Mhm.
okay.
And they were crafting. Desynthesis was giving 100% success rate or 100% skill up rate or something. It was just there was
Wow.
a couple of glitches early on that people were abusing.
There was also the loot bat.
The loot
Oh,
I did see the loot bat. Yes,
Yeah. There was a
I had a
bat
picture of that
in
somewhere.
King Grandpa's tomb that would give you 30k every time you killed it. It was just a normal mob and a normal mob respawn, and just killing it gave you 30k, like for some reason. And people were, as you can imagine, killing the hell out of loot bat.
It was just
So
a
bad.
random mob.
yeah. So
Random bat.
because they can basically I remember talking to like one of the devs about this. Basically, because you got to think a mob, like a single mob, has its own mob ID.
Mhm.
So that mob ID and whatever table it was in had a gil value, and that gil value for that particular mob ID was just really high when it shouldn't have been. Instead of 330 gil, it was like 30k or whatever.
Somebody moved to 0.
Yeah.
But it's a bat. Bats don't drop Gil. Is that different, Horizon?
Well, no, but I assume all mobs have a similar template, and it's just you would leave it out for bats
No.
normally, I guess.
So maybe like a goblin was supposed to drop it because there's goblins in the zone, but it's a bat because its IDs are sequential or something. Who knows?
Yeah, right. Exactly.
But it could be what you guys are suffering from right now, because if you think about it, NPC generated Gil is how it happened in retail. It's just natural it follows suit in Horizon as well. So it could be how some inflation's happening.
I mean, there is a bit of inflation going on. Eric did mention it in our interview with him. He said there was more gil being added into the economy than he was comfortable with. And I mean, I know a couple of crafts are sort of like, there are money print synths that are happening, but I would say they're pretty commensurate with the time you spend actually sitting down and crafting. It's not like over the top right now. I'm sure they are monitoring the situation.
Yeah, I'm sure they are.
But I mean, you still like the price of the mats in the auction house versus the time it takes to synth. You're maybe ending up with 40k an hour or something like that. Maybe a little more. So it is a thing, but it's definitely not to the extent that like some of those rusty items we're doing back in the day, or OG Holy Waters. Like Holy Water here is a money synth. You can print it and sell it. I mean, you can synth it and sell it, and you'll make gil, like light crystal plus distilled water. But like your time invested isn't worth. You could just be camping in an M or synthing things that matter. So it does exist, but it's not a massive inflation. At least doesn't look like it from a crafter's perspective. I do remember that. So were you crafting at the time when that hyperinflation was going on? Because I know my alchemy was pretty darn high at the time.
That I don't think that was, but I do remember
Okay.
getting lucky in V-Claw because you remember the BCs, you get the Chaos 30, the Black Mages kill all the Scorpions.
Yeah. Okay.
That was probably my
ODS?
first big. Yes, Operation Desert Swarm.
Yeah.
That's probably my first big ticket item was the V-Claw. I got like 3 back-to-back, something ridiculous. They sold for like 10 mil each. I shouted and it sold instantly.
Jeez.
That's how I got most of the money to probably, pretty sure I invested that in the alchemy at that point.
I'm always poor.
Do you have like Beastman
just
seals
more
and Kindred
stuff.
seals? DA?
I got a few. About 400 Beastman seals I'm sitting on right now, so
Gotta do some of the money BCNMs, man.
gonna have
Go
to.
do some AA runs.
Yeah, get Cal.
Ron.
AA
I did
Rons.
some AA runs the other day. I made about 700K. So,
Talking about the buying and selling of to back and forth to an NPC, it kind of brings us into a glitch fest. You want to go ahead and kick that off, because I know Quetch, you usually have one. I always try
do.
to start off with you.
I have one this week as well. So
Go
this is
for it.
Glitch Fest. This is the part of the podcast where we take a lighthearted approach to the inevitable glitchiness that a server of this kind of size has. And this past week, I was doing Dynamis Valkyr. We had a couple of crazy things happen, actually. Okay, so one thing that happened is there's these fly trap mobs. You guys know the ones, right? The fly traps. They're like they got the little sprouts and they're like thin, and y'all know what I'm talking about,
AoE
right?
sleep on them, everything.
Yeah, so AoE sleep, poison, everything.
Mhm.
So part of our alliance found themselves in like a field of them, and they were constantly spamming their status effects, and in such a way that nobody could wake up. Everybody was stuck there sleeping, and the people from that part of the alliance started streaming it for us. They were like perma stun locked with sleeps, and we're just like, well, you guys are on your own. Like, we could send somebody out there, but we're just gonna get stuck with y'all.
How do you not get out of that? Can you just like cast Cure outside of range on one of them to get them out? Because if it's like a 1 minute timer, as soon as it wears, it sounds like they were reapplying.
They were reapplying
it. Stack.
Right. They were.
So
it was being reapplied.
If it reapplies, then couldn't you cast Cure on one of them early? Or were
I think they
kinda,
did
like,
eventually break
overlapping?
that cycle by. Well, they were overlapping, so like it'd be like 30 seconds would go by and they just get reslept. Our alliance would get reslept. I think they did eventually get out of it, but that was just really kind of surreal. This weird miasma of like fly traps, like putting in a nightmare lock in Dynamis Valkyr. You know, it's like a nightmare zone. It was just really this kind of weird experience. But also in that same zone, we were fighting the Gubu NM that you have to kill to remove the charm effect from the main boss. And that was charming like every, I don't know if it's a percentage thing, but we'd be charmed, we'd get uncharmed, we'd be able to fight it for like 10 seconds, and then we'd all get charmed again. But that's not the glitchy part. The glitchy part was it charmed us, and it walked us up the side of the dunes and over. Okay, so there's like, in the dunes to the secret beach. I think this is a secret beach area, but the same concept. There's this place, and there's the tunnel, and then there's the next part of the dunes. We walked over the tunnels, like following this Gubu as it's like trying to go, find the other alliance members and go kill them. And I just like I took the tiniest bit of video I could get while I realized what was going on. But like here we are trudging over this like part of Valkyr dunes, and we're coming towards a just sheer black cliff of like no more zone data. It's like the end of the mesh or whatever. And we're just like, oh no, not like this. Like we see the black void below, and we're like, he's gonna take us down there, isn't he? Luckily we kind of like scooted, like he pulled us past it, and we got over, and we got like uncharmed, like we were on the sand, so everything was fine. But it was kind of hilarious. It took us on a journey.
I want to see that clip because that is terrifying.
Yeah, I'll see what I managed to get, because like we were falling apart, man. It was too funny.
I actually have one this week too. It's nothing crazy like Quetch's, but during mine and DA's escapades of camping a monster Signa staff for the last week, we got bored and we were messing around. I decided to do like /sit chair, so that you sit down on your little chair and you're chilling. And I didn't realize that this would cause mobs to aggro, because I don't remember that causing mobs to aggro, but they do when you sit in a chair, which is weird, and I think it's a glitch too. But the glitch that I actually thought was hilarious, and DA got to see it, is I'm sitting on the chair, I aggro a mob, my paladin's sitting there, it's missing. It finally hits me, and I shield block. And then my character stands up, and the shield is gone. But it's still there. So I'm sitting there just blocking with my forearm over and over again while the thing's trying to kill me, and it stayed like that the entire time I was out there. I swapped the shield off, put it back on, no shield. It was a super weird glitch. As soon as I warped out and went to a different zone, it reset. But it was kind of funny.
That's pretty badass.
It is.
Yeah.
Your arm as a shield.
You even still run, you know, like when you run with a shield, your arm's like tucked up and you run.
Like a
You
sling.
still run with it, so your arm's just all up there. Yeah, it's kind of funny.
Let's see. You got any glitches?
No, only glitch that I keep running into is the black screen after being in an alliance for a while. That's literally it.
And it's
No.
all alliance stuff, or is it still
It
a lot of the
seems like-
time?
It
Go
just seems like if I'm in a full alliance with 3 full parties and we do anything for a significant amount of time, like if I do Dynamis, I'm guaranteed when I get warped back, whether it's from Dynamis or from outside, even when I get warped out of Dynamis naturally because the timer is over, I will load into a black screen.
Every time still.
Almost guaranteed.
Wow.
Yeah.
Coach, do you run into that with your dynamics? I haven't done anything. I don't have as many friends
Occasionally.
as you guys, so
Occasionally when I get warped out of Dyna, maybe twice. I remember one time it happening, but not in general, no.
Would Eric say blame Linux?
yeah.
That is what he said.
I think with both of them doing Dynamis and LTL getting it a lot more than Quetch, I think it's Blue Midge's fault. So they should just
Yes, it's got to be it. I'm assuming it's
obvious.
probably one of the add-ons I'm using, but I don't know.
Maybe.
Yeah, might not have to rotate. There was definitely one that when Horizon officially or first came out, there was something with the texture pack or mapping or something like that was causing a lot of issues with loading in for your initial cutscene or something of that sort. I can't remember exactly what it was. But yeah, it could be something like that you're getting more often than not. Eventually, I'll get there to be able to see if I run into it as well.
Makes me think it's a client issue.
I don't run anything like that, so if I get to that point and I don't have that issue, well, it's your add-ons.
What was that, Funk?
Got to be it.
Makes me think it's a client issue because if LTL is running into it and Quetch isn't, or Caladrius isn't, it has to be something locally instead of server side. Because I was watching streamers when it first released, and there's nonstop black screens because everyone had the texture back basically, and people figured out that was it. Maybe too many resources or something. Server computer side depends on your specs on your computer. Who knows? But probably has everything to do with it.
I have the most powerful computer that one can buy at home, so it's definitely not my computer's
Oh.
fault.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I ran.
I mean, the client's old as hell though.
I ran the texture pack pretty much nonstop since release, and a lot of that early black screening stuff they had to take care of code wise. It was definitely a server issue, a server communication issue that they have resolved basically, but it still lingers a little bit.
Yeah, that's what Eric said. It was basically a packet resolution issue. It would send the packet for you to zone and then never get the response, so it would just black screen you out and kick you.
Yeah, so the server has you planted there. People can come look at you on the other side of the zone that you zone through, but you never get the response to know that that's where you're there now.
It has happened in retail too, so it's not just a private server thing. It's just more common.
Interesting.
I do remember seeing posts on Reddit. What's going on here? It's just the same exact black screen. All you can see is characters and models of NPCs, but that's it.
I've got a lot less of them. It still can be there, but it's not something I constantly worry about every time I zone, unless I'm in specifically Juno. Juno, I get hit with it every now and then. I think that's the most common.
Funk, did you have anything from retail days that's gone past? Any glitches that you remember?
Okay, I have 3 here. 3 good ones I picked
Okay.
out from. We're just talking about COP. No, not COP and Zilart. There could be
Correct.
more afterwards, but we're talking Horizon era. So the first one is the March Festival, as JP called it. So after the update, I forget which one it is, but I think it's October, I want to say 2005 or something like that. So after an update, a bug occurred where bards using March with instruments called the Royal Spearman's Horn +1 or Royal Spearman's Horn +2, which came from conquest points. Since then, these items were removed from the game. If you sang marches with those songs, you get a massive boost in effectiveness. So the buff was not given to other March Plus instruments, only these 2. So Jallar Horn was not affected. But during this glitch, it was reported that the duration of March was up to 30 minutes at the low end, 90 minutes at the high end. According to Japanese websites, the March glitch was said to have given players unimaginable speed. So two-handed weapons would swing like a one-hander, daggers would swing like 100 fists, and a monk could hold hit comfortably without provoke. Some bone crafters are making, so I guess it wasn't conquest, because bone crafters are making these horns. And they mentioned it was unexpected extraordinary income from making some of these horns. It's corrected after the October 28th emergency maintenance, and the horns were removed. So it's only a few days, but it's still pretty funny.
Holy shit.
As you say, it's spaghetti.
Galahorn.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
want to sing
seriously.
my songs and have them last, 30, 90 minutes and just be like, all right, guys, I'm going to go have a sandwich and watch TV.
Another one else has to do with delay. So it's the 999 delay exploit. So basically, an infinite insert fists. So after an update, using a weapon with 999 delay with a multi-hit weapon skill, players will receive more in the 100 TP. At the time, this was equivalent to 1,000 TP that retail has today. I don't know if you guys have 100 still on Horizon or what, but if you would use, so if you use weapon skill like a certain fist with this weapon, you get TP again. You just sit there spamming into certain fist over and over again because you get TP instantly after you used it, so you don't have to melee at all. So it's basically infinite a certain fist.
Your TP return was based on your delay. Your delay was 999. Was that the relic knuckles I think they might have been using?
Yeah, most likely relic knuckles. Yeah, because you also have the sword from the Dark Knight. It's probably 666, isn't it?
Yeah, the one from the Dark Knight Quest. It's 6.
Okay, so it must have been like the relic knuckles or something. Not very many with 999 delay. It's all the relic weapons
so
basically.
funny.
So even with 1 damage or whatever it is, you still got a whole TP instantly.
Yeah, you Azure Fists more than you auto attack. Even with a 1 damage, you'd still produce better. Think of the animations on that though. The colors and the lights. Fireworks constantly.
So here's one to leave you guys off with. So you haven't Virtua yet, right?
We just got Virtua.
Yeah, Virtua exists.
Oh.
And, I forgot. Yeah, there's only one link shell that can kill it, but it exists. It's on the server.
Who's
I may
that?
Or may not have
Who's that?
the title. I may or may not have the title. But yeah, no, we've got it down. Nobody else. Others have tried. I think another link shell tried. We were at it for like 45 minutes. Got Virtua to 97%, and then decided it wasn't worth it and went home. But yeah, there's one link shell that can kill it. It just
I'm
came out
watching
like
LTL's head swell as he talks.
He's such a bold man.
So bold.
Yeah, congrats, man. You guys server first. Congrats.
On all 3. We have server first on all 3 worms.
Oh, hold on. Get a little.
So did they change the spawn time or location or anything at all for that?
Oh, thank you, DA. Thank you. No, it spawns in the same place. It's got like a 72 hours, and then it after is it 72? I think it's after 72. Again, I'm talking out of my ass here. I don't know exactly. But it's like I think after 3 days, it can spawn like there's like every hour there's a window for I think 30 seconds after once its window opens, and that's like after 72 hours, I believe. And that's for all.
I do follow the Horizon news. That's how Eric explained exactly how they spawn. It's like a smaller window in hour increments instead of half hour. I think it was.
Right. Yeah. They just recently
So-
changed that.
So on topic of Virtua, you can, I don't know if it's possible on Horizon, I'm sure they fixed it, but on the Lakshmi world, Virtua was found near Spook at one time.
Really?
Yes, so it is said that an unknown player may have aggroed him and used like third-party tools to teleport himself back to Spook, so POS hacked back to Spook, and Virtua followed him there, like teleported over to him. So somehow Virtua was sitting in the area of Spook. So
It'd be a hell of a surprise
not
to
known
run
if-
that corner.
Surprise,
Go out there to
motherfucker.
Camp Spook, you're like, I'm going to get this back piece, and then all of a sudden, Virtua.
It's not known if it was on purpose or a mistake, but a GM ended up killing it after GM call. It was said that the GM swung every 8 seconds or so and did like 8% damage to it back then. But it was pretty funny though. I would imagine just walking around the corner and seeing Virtua drag you in and kill you, because it wouldn't go back to its spawn. It just sat there stuck at Spook.
Oh, we wouldn't
No
go
thanks.
back. That's
it wouldn't
so
go back, so it
funny.
just sat there after you died. Yeah.
Because
So
it
there
has
are
to walk back to its place, and you can't get back down that area without like accepting the travel down there. So yeah, that makes
Right.
sense.
Yep. So there are pictures on my history pages of this, and there's pictures of Virtua sitting there at Spook. So if you ever get, I can post these, and I'll post these ones as well in the Discord after this.
I definitely
That's
have
great.
your links as well that I'm going to make sure we put in the description of this video. So we also
Yes.
have everybody can go to the development page. We have a couple links that we've talked about today as well that they can go through the descriptions to be able to pull up. But anybody got any wrap-up questions for Funk here? Because this has been a wonderful trip down the old 2004, 2005 memory lane with COP, Zilart, and all the little bells and whistles that he's been more in-depth and fingers and hands-on with that pass. I can't imagine how much scavenging you had to do for all that. So anybody got any other questions?
No. I just want to say I've used BG Wiki more than I want to admit. I'm constantly lost.
Well, we appreciate you using it.
I have one. So there's a tale that you and DA might have been in the same link shell at one point in the past, and I was wondering what the story was there.
I think he was more of a lurker.
I was always in his streams, that's for sure. I do have one memory of DA watching his streams. I'll share this.
Oh,
Remember
no.
when you were? This isn't a bad memory, so no worries. But I remember that you always did Neo's Nizu Isle every time
And
the
then I-
event was up. You loved your Saga Singer. At island level, you use your Saga Singer to steal those buffs from the
Oh
global
yeah,
card.
yeah.
Yep. I always remembered using that instead of a more powerful sword. Instead of just killing the thing instantly, you rather get the buff. It's just something that stuck with me all the time. It's just Dirky DA using the Saga Singer all the time.
It was fun to steal things. I love stealing. It's like, oh look, 30-minute what is it? Blaze fire
Blaze spikes?
AoE blaze spikes. 30-minute blaze spikes. You just randomly steal. It was garbage damage, but it was a Saga Singer, man. That's why I was in the offhand, I believe. I think it was in the offhand.
Screw the meta. You just wanted buff for
Blaze spikes. It was. You'd see a new icon appear at the top. You're like, ooh, what's that? And you look at it, and you're like, that's a buff that I know, but I've never had it for an hour. Well, too bad Neo Nizu Isle's only 20 to 30 minutes on there. I forgot all about the Saga Singer, man. Wow.
Yep.
I got that out of
I
this
was
overall.
deeply hoping that he was going to be like, remember that time you shit yourself on stream?
Why you gotta bring that up, bro?
I do remember you having your son play the game with you back then. Not recently on Horizon, but back then. I'm sitting next to you and teaching him the game.
Oh, trying to teach him the game. Yeah, he's.
Yep.
I don't want to get him in that rabbit hole of this, but that's those memories, man. I do remember, like I said, being in your stream. Every time I see you go live, I'm in there, being able to check those data files because I want to be on top of whatever comes down the pipes. And if I knew how to get that item or be first one to do it, I remember when Dynamis D, I think it was, first came out, and they were releasing. I think it's the Dynamis D. Is that the name of it? I've been in retail.
Divergence. We call it
Divergence.
Dynamis D.
That's it.
Yeah.
The first day it came out, like when you were going through the patch notes, I followed you through and I knew how to be able to kind of unlock it. I was the first one. I was world first into Dynamis D on retail on Asura. I didn't do anything. I just entered it and got my ass clapped. But I at least went into it first, and I felt pretty special on that. So I got to give you credit and thank you.
How did you do that? It takes 3 people to get in.
No, I was in. I have a video of it. I don't know how, unless 2 other people were with me. But I remember going in.
Okay, I'd like to see the video on that. That's weird.
I'm gonna pull it. I'm gonna pull it.
3 people.
I will pull
you need
it.
3 people to get in there, so I'm
You
pressing
have to pull
exit
that
out.
clip.
I
And
have
now
to.
you're gonna have to pull the clip I mentioned a minute ago.
I'm not pulling the shit clip. Anyways. But yes, Funk, I appreciate you coming by. We're gonna have all the links to everything that we've discussed today in the description, so you might have some Horizon people coming by, checking out the data files and the live streams, and some more people checking out the history of Vana'diel for all the newcomers we have. I want to appreciate you and give you a thank you for joining us today for this interview. I didn't expect it to be this long and this detailed, but when you start diving into the history and past with the passion that you have, it definitely gives us, I would say, more questions every answer you have gave us 2 more questions to be able to ask. So I appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. And I hope everybody enjoys the project. And I do appreciate you having me here. It's nice to meet you, LTL and Caladrius. And I do have followed you, Quetch, on YouTube, and I've watched streams and such. It's nice to talk to you for once.
Yeah, actually talk in person. Yeah, it's our first time.
Thank
Yeah,
you
Thanks for
for
so
coming
coming
on,
if
man.
It's great.
Oh, you're welcome.
appreciate
And
it.
if you ever
Thank
need a guest in the future, if they when they release TOAU, I'd be happy to come back and talk to talk about TAU in the past and the established bands and all that. That'd be amazing to talk about and discuss.
I can't wait. Can't wait for the salvage fans. With that being said, we're going to go ahead and wrap up the episode 6 on here. I appreciate everyone that stopped by. Remember, please check out the Discord. That is, again, linked in the descriptions that we have to be able to have engagement with each one of the members of the community. Check the links as well that we're posting in there. And please feel free to do all the clicks, likes, subscribes, supporting of the channel. We do read all the comments. Whether they're bold or you're in Gideus too much. But I want to say thank you so much for being able to come out and have a great rest of the day. See you in Gideus.